So to go back to the Medium article that you wrote
Yeah.
on creating an Instagram account called Beautiful NYC, and you were able to automate it using your experience as a data coder. Could you give people a brief overview that may have not read that article? And I'm going to link the article for everyone listening to this in the podcast description. But for people who haven't seen it yet, and it went viral on Medium, could you describe briefly what you did and why you did it with that Instagram account?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, what I did is I made an Instagram account that was completely sustaining. And what I mean by that is on its own, using some programs I wrote, um, did the posting, did the actual finding of the pictures, captioning it, coming up with strategic hashtags, following people, unfollowing people. And it's on its own. It was to the point where I didn't even need to even log into it anymore for it to operate in a very strategic manner. But the end goal of it, which was also automatic, was for it to kind of become its own little influencer, if you will. And by that, I mean it reached out to restaurants in New York City and said, hey, I got this really big, popular Instagram account. It's all post pictures in New York City. Everyone's, looking for things to do in New York City. They come to my account, come let me, eat for free at your restaurant, and I'll post about your restaurant, on the Instagram account. And I got a lot of positive responses from restaurants, and I was actually able to go and enjoy the benefits of that a couple times.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I that's someone's dream. That is people's dream to be able to use social media to get what they want. I think about that like fashion
Exactly.
with fashion all the time. I know
Yeah.
I messaged you a little bit over email about would this be possible on TikTok, because for whatever reason I've had some more success on TikTok than Instagram, and so immediately when I saw
Yeah.
that, I thought, okay, how can I automate this for fashion, or how can I create this page where people will just send me free shoes or free clothes and stuff. So
Yeah.
when I read about what you were doing, I had heard about bots, and I've experimented with bots myself on Instagram. Got
Hmm.
flagged for having too many likes or unlikes, which you talked about
Right.
in the article, and so I ended up just getting rid of that account completely. But could you describe to people what you did, how it's different from the traditional bot? Because it sounds like you had an artificial intelligence twist on it, where it was actually learning
Hmm.
as it was going.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I guess there are definitely a lot of softwares out there, and I don't know if you care to share which ones you tried, or do you remember?
If you could you say a couple that are big? Maybe it was one of those.
Uh,
It was about 2 years
Follow
ago.
Liker,
Follow
Jarvie.
follow like your sounds really familiar.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, my introduction into actual programming, not even botting and social media, like actual programming, was because I was using Follow Liker,
Mm-hmm.
and I hated it. I didn't know how to really write any code when I graduated college. I was using Follow Liker. It was driving me nuts, and I said, "There's no way such a popular software can't be written better." And I
Mm-hmm.
set out to learn how to program to write a better software. That's actually how I got into all of this in the get go. And I think that those softwares, whether that's Follow Like or Jarvie, they just kind of execute on the tasks that you tell it um, to do. However, you as a person don't really know what to do. You just think you do.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean by that is, you load pre customized settings into these softwares that say, follow 300 people a day, unfollow these people, do this, that. But, who's to say you actually know what you're doing? You're just kind of using your intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, again, I did that at first, and I was like, I don't know that I'm doing this the right way, or I don't know that I'm going to get in trouble by doing it the way I think it should be done. So um, what I did is I said, okay, I'm going to let the program tell me. Um, and I basically created an army of Instagram accounts where I randomized the functionality. Follow this amount of people, unfollow this, like this, do this, and record when I was getting shut off or rate limited or whatever,
Hmm.
and basically have it teach itself what is the maximum amount it could get away with before you're going to get, in trouble. And, I think Instagram updated that a lot on their end, which in turn caused people who were using these softwares to, not be able to figure that out, that it changed, and
Hmm.
not update it and then get themselves in trouble. Whereas my thing, on the accounts, as soon as it hit that, it went back into its settings and said, we need to change something. And it did that automatically, which allowed me to, to go about the automation in a smarter way than just loading something into a software and hoping um, what you can get away with.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of that thing that a lot of influencers do in the Instagram community, but no one ever talks about really using
Yeah.
bots. I've heard some podcasts that talk about it in depth, but I was one of those guys who jumped into it with zero experience in bots, and I didn't do much research on what the limits were for Instagram. I kind of watched
Right.
a couple YouTube videos, was like, oh, that's perfect. While I'm at work, I'll have my Instagram following just like keep going up and up and up. And
Right.
it did for a while, but the engagement was getting lower and lower, which didn't make sense to
Hmm.
me. And
Yeah.
so when I was getting more followers, I was thinking this is great. I'm just gonna up the limit. So I was probably following maybe between 600 and 800 people a day, like follow, unfollow,
Yeah. Right.
and then the engagement started going way down, and it was to the point where the account that I first created for the podcast had 10,000 followers, but I was getting like 50 likes on a photo, where
Hmm.
before I had maybe a couple thousand, but I was getting like 300 likes. So I was like, what the fuck is going on? So I finally looked into it, and Instagram, there's all this stuff with shadow banning, or it'll kind of like
Yeah.
demote your account and stuff like that. And I know it sounds salty to say that you got shadow banned because maybe my content just sucked. That's also a possibility too. Like
Yeah.
it was just fucking terrible, and that's why no one was like it. But there was like a
Right.
definite drop from when I looked back
Yeah.
to the analytics of when I raised the follow unfollow
Hmm.
count to when everything started going off the cliffs. So I just
Right.
kind of trashed that account, assumed
Hmm.
it was just done, and then basically started over. So I, I I think it's an important thing to talk about because people want to become Instagram influencers and they want to use bots, but it's like one of those things. If everyone does it but no one talks about it, then no one learns about it because there's no thing,
Right.
there's not a lot of resource on how to use a bot properly on social media
Hmm.
because people don't want to come out and admit like this is what I've learned from using a bot because then that means you've
Right.
used a bot.
Exactly. Yeah. And like I'm not as much into the botting game as I used to be, especially when I wrote that article.
Hmm.
But there are a lot of different theories about why that happened. And like you said, not only does someone not divulge their secrets when it comes to botting, right? You can't just go knock on Instagram's door either and say, "What's going on
Yeah, like
here?"
how do I use a bot? Instagram, how do I cheat your
Yeah,
system?
exactly. Like exactly. Or you can't even say like, "Hey, what's going on with my engagement rate?"
Hmm.
One theory that I tend to believe, again, and this is anecdotal, is that about 6 to 10 months ago, somewhere in that range, I just across the Instagram spectrum, engagement dropped. Like, I mean, I'm talking like everyone was complaining. It was like kind of sudden, and someone said, "Yeah, they actually did this on Facebook too. They got people hooked, dropped engagement. People want to keep their engagement up, and they go buy ads through actual Instagram to get it back up."
Hmm.
Because that's kind of where they based everything at this point. They can't afford for it to go down. And I tested that theory on one account I had. I went and just bit the bullet and bought like a heavy ad spend. And after that, my engagement on my post went back to normal
Hmm.
or much